Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to discuss contextual questions. Contextual questions are the questions on the SAT where, in order to solve them correctly, you need to understand what's going on. There are three types of contextual questions. Questions where you have to find an appropriate introduction for the passage, like the one that you're seeing on the screen right now. Another type is the questions where you have to find out what the main idea of the passage is, and that you also can see on the screen right now. And also contextual ending questions, where you have to find an appropriate conclusion, summary, or just ending for the passage. In all of these scenarios, in order to solve the questions correctly, you always have to understand the passage. And understanding the passage may be challenging sometimes, especially if the passages are written with complicated English. So before we begin going into technicalities of answering such questions, I would like to mention a few things. First of all, you need to possess a certain level of English in order to succeed on the SAT's verbal section. And if you want to improve your English, you do not actually have to go to English courses or, um, always expect people to give you advice. Not really. You can actually improve your level by reading consistently. If you take a book in your hands and start reading it, it's going to be hard in the beginning. You will have many questions in your mind. You will not understand maybe most of the book. But if you learn the vocabulary in the book and understand the grammar and the sentence structures, you will get used to the language. You will train your brain to recognize words that you have already learned and the words that you're learning now. You will train your brain to read and understand information in written text. It is easy to understand information with ears when you hear something because we are used to that. We are speaking to our family members and friends every single day. It is also easy to understand information um, when we read it, but it's a little bit harder when you get to long passages. And in order for you to get used to understanding this information even easier than understanding spoken information, you have to get yourself used to reading. There is no way around it. Yeah. So this is the number one thing. You have to get used to reading, and that can be accomplished by reading for at least 1 hour per day. Again, I'm going to say this, in the beginning is going to be hard. Maybe you will lose your focus. You will be distracted by the people around you or maybe your phone. So in order to read efficiently, you have to switch off your phone, put it far away, and also tell everybody around you, whether it's your friends or family, that you are going to be busy so that they don't disturb you. Well, next, the thing that is important in such questions is your ability to really focus on the context and recognize clues. In the passage, you're going to have different clues. For example, here we're looking at a beginning question. We need to find a beginning. In order to find an appropriate beginning, we have to understand what the passage is about. If it's about ice cream, our beginning is going to be about ice cream. If it's about friendship, our beginning is going to be about friendship. The main idea of the passage can be found from the keywords that are used very often. If you see a certain keyword being used 2 or 3 or 4 times, you should consider that keyword as the part of the main idea. For example, if in this passage they mention the word sunshine 4 times, probably the main idea of this passage is something about sunshine. You should understand that the main idea of the passage can be found from those clues that you see very often while reading the passage. The other very important thing is for you to build a picture in your own mind. So while reading this, you have to imagine what's going on. If they're talking about a person and if they're describing this person, you have to imagine this person. Think about how this person looks like. Think about what he or she is wearing. It's also useful because that way you will activate your brain and your thinking. And that way you are going to tell your brain, hey, here is something interesting. I want you to pay attention. And your brain is going to pay attention, and hopefully you will understand the passage a little bit easier. Well, now it is time for us to practice. But of course, during this session, I am going to explain to you the strategies about how to solve each type of these problems. And also we're going to see them in practice. That means in the next questions, you will be able to use these strategies in practice. So let's read this as if we're reading it for the first time in our life. Maybe you are. When the wealthy Ellicott family built a flour mill not far from his farm, whose farm? Who is he? His farm. Who are they referring to? Well, they will mention it after the comma. Remember, always wait for the information. It will come. So, Banneker befriended George Ellicott. Who is George Ellicott? Who is Banneker? These are two different people, and you have to keep it in mind and maybe even imagine them. Okay, there are two different people. One of them is called Banneker, the other one is George Ellicott. I don't know these people, but I'm going to imagine them to understand this passage. When the wealthy Ellicott family built a flour mill not far from his farm, so Ellicott family, George Ellicott, they're building a flour mill. Flour mill is a huge type of a building that is used to produce flour that you use in your bread and bakery. So this person, Banneker, befriends George Ellicott, whose knowledge about science and astronomy impressed him. So George Ellicott's knowledge about science and astronomy impressed Banneker. We are referring to Banneker as his and him. Okay, so Banneker is the subject here that we're referring to with pronouns. Cool. So they became friends. To befriend somebody means to become friends with somebody. They met regularly at the flour mill and Banneker's home to discuss debates in astronomy. Okay, so these friends are now meeting regularly, probably every day. From Ellicott, Banneker borrowed books by authors such as blah, 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 a leading astronomer of the time. Notice how I'm not even reading the name at the end because I don't care about it. I know who the passage is about. It's about Banneker and George Ellicott. All I needed to know was the fact that they became friends, they started visiting each other often, and they borrowed books from each other. Have you built this situation in your mind? Have you been able to imagine this? If yes, then perfect, you're on the right track. During the entire passage, they have been talking about two people befriending each other, two people becoming friends. So what would be a good introduction to the passage? Maybe they should introduce it by saying, in a certain year, a certain family became friends with a certain person, or in a certain year, two males became friends. You know, something like that would be appropriate. Let's take a look at choice A. In the 1770s, Banneker made a fortuitous friendship. Fortuitous means something that brings you fortune, luck, something nice. In the 1770s, Banneker, this person that we're talking about in the passage, made a good friendship. That makes a lot of sense. We're talking about his friend. We're talking about what they used to do. So this is a possible answer. In fact, let's underline it for now. In the 1770s, the 1770s were filled with social and political upheaval. Upheaval is protests. When people go on the street and they protest, that's upheaval. So is it really the case here? Are we talking about any protests, upheavals, political stuff? Not at all. So B goes away. We eliminate it immediately. C, Banneker's life was significantly influenced by several people. Now here comes the other tip that I want to give you. Whenever you are answering such questions, you have to be very picky. I repeat, very picky about the words that you see in the passage. What does it mean? It means in the passage, if you're talking about one person, one friend, then the answer should also be about one friend. If in the passage you're talking about one friend, but in the answer choice it says several people, that is not consistent. The passage did not mention several people. It mentioned only one person, George Ellicott. I'm sorry, Banneker. Yeah, Banneker is the friend of George Ellicott. So that means that we're talking about one person and not several people. And this is already a clue that you can eliminate the choice on the SAT. And I'm serious about it. I have done research for 5 years, and in many SAT problems, you were able to eliminate choices because one of the words was incorrect. So C goes away. D. Banneker continued his studies in science and math. Okay, Banneker is continuing to study science and math, but who is George Ellicott then? And why would they introduce Banneker in the beginning when they're talking about George Ellicott's family? That's not good because they introduce Banneker later. That means the chronology is broken, and that's very important. Chronology is the next thing that you have to understand. First, you give an idea to somebody, then you introduce somebody, then you explain about somebody. For example, there's a really good tutor. He teaches SAT. His name is Emin Tolukan, and I purchased his course, and I've been studying with him ever since. What did we do? We had a chronology. We cannot say there's a guy named Emin Tolukan. Everybody will say, so what? If there's a guy named Emin Tolukan, you will not be able to grab anybody's attention. But if you say there's an amazing course and it's taught by Emin Tolukan, oh, everybody will understand who I am, Emin Tolukan, and therefore people will be more engaged in your passage or text. And here the chronology is broken if you want to introduce Banneker and then Ellicott and then again Banneker. That's not nice. Not only that, this passage is not about Banneker studying math alone. He has a friend with whom he's sharing books and knowledge. So D goes away because number one, it's chronologically wrong, and number two, it's not a nice introduction. It does not establish the main topic of the paragraph because throughout the paragraph, they have been speaking about friendship and how these two people visit each other. So in the 1770s, Banneker made a fictitious friendship. That is a good beginning for this passage. It establishes the main topic of the paragraph. So let's repeat. Essentially, what is the main idea of a passage or a paragraph? The main idea is the set of keywords and ideas that have been used throughout the passage, not only in one place, but in many places. The fact that they're friends and that they like each other and that they visit each other was mentioned throughout the entire passage. Not only at the beginning, but also in the middle. They met regularly. They also emphasized their friendship at the end. They borrowed books from each other. So that means that we're not only talking about science, that we're not talking about pancakes, we're talking about these people being friends. To get better at SAT mathematics or SAT's verbal section, register to my SAT video course where I explain literally every single topic in videos, and you will have an opportunity to practice with over 400 digital SAT practice problems. Just visit the link in the description and you will come to this page where you will learn everything that my SAT course offers. And if you want to buy the course and watch my videos where I explain everything, then you can press this button and contact me on WhatsApp. Thank you for watching.